They told me I would see God in the Vatican. Instead, I saw a machine that could watch him die. Tonight, a priest who walked away breaks his silence. Not with theories, with testimony. He held documents that were supposed to be destroyed. He stood in rooms that don't exist on any map. He saw technology that defies everything we know about time itself. For 11 years, he served inside the walls. He believed he was protecting faith, until he realized what faith was protecting. Secret excavations, forbidden devices, a photograph that shouldn't exist. This is not about conspiracy theories or internet rumors. This is about a machine that was built, that worked and then vanished. They say once you enter the Vatican, you belong to it forever. And in some ways, they're right. I took my vows at 23, young, naive, burning with certainty. They assigned me to the Apostolic Archives, not because I was special, because I was fluent in 7 languages and could read ancient Greek without a dictionary. My job was simple: catalog documents, preserve history, keep my mouth shut. And for the first 3 years, I did exactly that. I transcribed papal letters. I organized medieval manuscripts. I learned which questions not to ask. But in the Vatican, silence has layers. And the deeper you go, the heavier it gets. There was a hallway on the 3rd basement level, without signs and labels. Just a steel door with a keypad that changed codes every 48 hours. One morning, a senior archivist handed me a slip of paper. 6 digits, handwritten. "You're needed below," he said. "Don't ask questions, don't touch anything. Just observe and report back to me." I took the elevator down, punched in the code. The door hissed open. The smell hit me first. Not dust, not age, something metallic, chemical, like ozone after lightning strikes. Inside was a room the size of a small chapel. No windows, fluorescent lights humming overhead. And in the center, on a metal table, sat a device I had never seen in any textbook. It looked like a television from the 1950s. Cathode ray tubes, antennae jutting out at odd angles, copper wiring soldered in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, almost coded. A priest I didn't recognize was standing beside it, older, thin, with hands that trembled slightly when he gestured for me to come closer. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. I shook my head. He smiled, not warmly, like someone about to share a burden they wish they'd never carried. "This," he said, "is the chronovisor, and according to Father Ernetti, it can see the past." I thought he was joking, but his eyes were dead serious. He told me the story. How in the 1950s, a Benedictine monk named Pellegrino Ernetti claimed to have built this machine with 12 scientists, Nobel Prize winners, rocket engineers, men whose names I recognized from history books. He told me they tested it in secret, that they aimed it at ancient Rome and watched senators debate, that they pointed it towards Jerusalem and witnessed events no living person should have seen. And then he showed me the photograph, a grainy black and white image, a man's face contorted in agony, thorns pressed into flesh, eyes half closed. "This," he whispered, "is what Father Ernetti said the machine captured. April 7th, 33 AD, Golgotha Hill. The crucifixion of Christ." I stared at the photo. My hands shook, not because I believed it, but because I realized someone inside the Vatican did. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. He didn't answer, just pointed to a file on the table, marked in red, classified, permanent seal. "Because," he said slowly, "we need someone young enough to keep this secret for the next 50 years, and devout enough not to break." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the machine, about what it meant if it was real, or worse, what it meant if someone powerful believed it was real. I started digging, quietly. carefully, using access I wasn't supposed to have. I found memos from the 1960s, Vatican officials discussing the Ernetti problem, debates about whether to destroy the device or hide it, references to photographic inconsistencies and potential doctrinal disruption. And then I found something that made my blood run cold. A handwritten note from 1972, signed by a cardinal whose name I won't speak. It said, "The device must never be disclosed, not because it doesn't work, but because it does." While I was unraveling the chronovisor mystery, I stumbled into something even stranger. The bones beneath St. Peter's Basilica. In 1939, during World War II, workers began digging under the basilica to prepare a tomb for Pope Pius XI. What they found should have stayed buried. A vast Roman necropolis, 2,000 years old, stretching for hundreds of feet beneath the church. And at the center of it all, a grave. Plain, unmarked, with graffiti scratched into the wall beside it. Greek graffiti that scholars interpret as reading Petros Eni, meaning Peter is here. The excavations were closely controlled and conducted with limited public communication. No press, no announcements, just pickaxes scraping stone in the dead of night while bombers flew overhead. But here's the part they don't tell tourists on the Scavi tour. The bones they found didn't match. The first set? 4 different people. 2 men, an elderly woman, and animal bones mixed in from the old circus grounds where Christians were fed to lions. Not exactly what you'd expect from the tomb of the first pope. Then, in 1953, a scholar named Margherita Guarducci found a second set of bones, hidden in a wall niche, wrapped in purple and gold cloth. She claimed they were Peter's. The Vatican agreed. In 1968, Pope Paul VI announced to the world that the relics of St. Peter had been found. Case closed, history confirmed, faith vindicated. Except one of the lead archaeologists, Father Antonio Ferrua, never believed it. He said publicly, multiple times, that there was no conclusive proof. But by then, the narrative was set. The bones were enshrined, and anyone who questioned it was quietly reassigned. I read Ferrua's private letters, stored in a box marked personnel disputes. He wrote to colleagues saying he felt pressured to stay silent, that the church needed a victory, that faith mattered more than facts. One line haunted me. Sometimes the bones we bury are not the saints. They are our doubts. Once you see it, you can't stop seeing it. The Vatican doesn't lie. It just manages truth like inventory. The chronovisor? Real device, real scientists. But the photo? Debunked. A postcard from an Italian church statue. St. Peter's bones? Real excavation. But which bones? No DNA test has conclusively verified the identity. Conclusions rest on archaeological and anthropological assessment. It's always the same pattern. Something real at the core, wrapped in layers of belief and bureaucracy, until you can't tell where history ends and hope begins. The church didn't rewrite history. It just controlled which chapters you were allowed to read. I left in the winter of 2019. No confrontation. No dramatic exit. I simply stopped showing up. They sent letters, emails, a visit from my former mentor who asked if I'd lost my way. I told him the opposite was true, that I'd finally found it. He asked what I planned to do with what I knew, if I was going to betray the church. I said no. That betrayal requires breaking a promise, and I never promised to protect lies. Only the truth. He didn't argue. He just looked sad and said something I'll never forget. You think you're the first to walk away knowing what you know? You're not. But you might be the first foolish enough to talk. Maybe he's right. Maybe I am foolish. But I can't carry this alone anymore. The chronovisor might be locked away or destroyed, or sitting in pieces in some forgotten vault? I don't know, but I know someone built it, someone believed in it, and someone decided the world couldn't handle what it might reveal. The bones under St. Peter's? They might be authentic, they might not. But I know that doubt was buried deeper than the relics. And every time the Church chooses silence over transparency, it builds another wall between itself and the truth it claims to serve. I didn't leave because I hate the Church. I left because I love what it could be. A place where questions aren't threats, where history isn't curated, where faith is strong enough to survive facts. The Vatican Apostolic Archive holds about 85 kilometers, roughly 53 miles, of shelving, with significant storage underground. Documents that could rewrite what we know, and most of it will never see daylight. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's inconvenient. I'm not asking that we stop believing. I'm asking that we start questioning. Because the people who control the past control the future. The Vatican taught me 7 languages to unlock the past. But the one language they never taught me, the language of doubt, and that's the only language that leads to truth. I walked away from the Vatican. But I didn't walk away from God. I just stopped letting men in robes decide which version of Him I was allowed to see. Sometimes, late at night, I still smell it. That metallic scent from the basement room, like ozone after lightning.